Here we're going to test the Laser 4875 brake tester just to see how good or otherwise it really is. So first of all, remove the tester from its packaging, insert the battery which it came with, which incidentally the battery has been tested and shows a reading of 1.6 volts, so it's a good charged battery. A little bit fiddly, and we should get a green light showing the battery is good. We do. I will now put 100 millilitres of brake fluid into this container using .3 brake fluid. It's fresh from the container itself. 100 millilitres of brake fluid now added. And of course, first of all, we now test the tester by placing it into the brake fluid up to the plastic which it says on the instructions. And we have a reading of, showing a reading of 1%. I'll now wipe off the electrodes so that they are clean. And we will now add, using a syringe, 1 millilitre of fresh water taken just from the water supply. So we now have some water added. There we go, exactly on the 5 millilitre line. I will now add 1 millilitre. One millilitre of water added, so there should be at least an increase of 1%, and it shows, give it a little stir so it's well mixed in, give it a stir, and it's showing exactly the same as it was before. Reactivate, and it shows 1%. And it should be showing nearly 2 if it was in fact at 1% before. So I will now add a further 1 millilitre of water. So it has now a minimum of 2% water content, and according to the original testing it should actually be slightly higher than that, but we know it's a minimum of 2% water. I'll now switch the tester back on again, insert it into the brake fluid, and the brake fluid reading is exactly the same at 1%. So the tester is not functioning and showing the true reading of the water content. I will now add a further 1 millilitre of water. So it now has a minimum of 3 millilitres of water, which would correspond to a minimum of 3% water content. I'll just clean off the electrodes, give them a thorough clean using some cleaner. So there'll be no residue on them at all. The instructions say just to clean it off with water, which should be sufficient. Having given them a good clean, we should now have a minimum of 3% water. Putting it again into, and it's showing 3%. Well, that's interesting. Now it's showing 2%. So I will now redo that. Having rinsed the end of the tester. It's showing 3%. We rinse the end of the tester. Well, we know that it started off at showing 1%. So it should be showing 4%, if anything. So I'm going to add another 1 milliliter of water. So it's got a minimum of 4%, which of course is now at the dangerous level of water content, should you find that in your braking system, because ideally you want a level to be less than 2%. And the less water it's got, the better. And it's still showing a content level of 3%, even though we know there is at least 4% water content in there. Just do another one, and it's still showing 3%, which is a lot less than the actual content of water in the system. I'll now put the remaining water in. So we now know we've got a minimum of 5% water content in this brake fluid, which would not ever be used again, because it would be dangerous to do so. Just rinsing that one off and dry the end. Okay, so we now have a minimum of 5% and we are showing 4%. Well, that's something, I suppose. But what we conclude from this test is that this tester is at best unreliable. At worst, it's inaccurate, and in an extreme case, it could be potentially dangerous. So I conclude that it's not fit for purpose. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it's helpful for your future purchases.